Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Dragon Prince video. This is going to be my discussion analysis for the Season 5 trailer that just released today. But I'll also be going over all of the other preview material that has come out, including some of the other video clips that we've got, some of the short stories that we've got, and just in general my own preview ahead of Season 5, because of course the whole idea of today is that this is exactly a month before Season 5 actually comes out officially. June 27th for the trailer, July 27th for Season 5 itself. Again, Season 5, otherwise known as Book 5 Ocean, is of course the second of 4 seasons of the show that will make up Mystery of Aravos. So I guess we're expecting Season 6, to be Star, and then Season 7 to be maybe Dark, or just have some sort of a different name, but we'll see how that all pans out. I won't be able to show off the trailer just for copyright reasons. I'm never sure when I can show footage or when I can't, so I'll be mainly going through screenshots, which will allow me to focus in on very specific points. But the trailer is linked below if you've not seen it yet, but the idea should be that you've seen it already, you're here for the analysis, but it's linked below if you need it. But I'll switch over to my screenshots here. So straight away getting into this, we actually open up with a quite interesting shot, which seems to be our main characters, Callum, Rayla and everyone, arriving at this dock as this boat with a mysterious figure arrives to take them somewhere. This is where we sort of get straight into sort of the structure of the season. Of course, we're expecting somewhat of a sea voyage to happen at some point, but based on a lot of the clips that we've seen, we're not exactly sure like how many sea voyages there's going to be in terms of like how much water are they going to actually cover. One of the main things we actually have, if I scroll down to the bottom here, is from the end of Season 4. Of course, the whole idea is that we're basically on this kind of MacGuffin quest in a way, that each of the archdragons has a clue to unlocking / finding the prison of Aravos. And so what we got in Season 4 was that on Rex Igneous, the Earth Archdragon's tooth, was a map to the next stage. Now, we don't know if this is the map to where Aravos' prison is, or just the next stage of the puzzle. I'm assuming it's the next stage of the puzzle. Now, is this a map to the Ocean Archdragon, Domina Profundis, or just something else? I'm not sure. But the idea is that this is what Terry, Claudia, Viren have, is this map. They have a rubbing of this map. So that's where they're heading. Our heroes don't quite have all of this information, and so are going to have to make their own way there. So what's guiding them, and do they get straight to where they need to go? Because the specific note on that map would be that is, I think, called the Sea of the Outcasts, if I remember correctly. So they're going to have to get there eventually. But anyway, throughout the trailer, we have lots of shots like this, which is basically Aravos talking to Viren, who seems to be in his final few hours before the kind of temporary resurrection spell comes to an end. Again, Claudia needs to actually find Aravos, free Aravos, so that Aravos can fully revive Viren. Until that happens, he is at risk of dying again, and I'm guessing being fully dead. So I'm guessing this is what is forming this sort of connection once again between the two, is that like Viren is like in between worlds almost, and that's what's happening here. And again, he's just kind of taunting him about the lack of time that he has left, but also noting that like Claudia is like ahead in the race, and she's more powerful than anyone coming after her as well. So that's what we get here, is as he points out that others are coming as well. We see that they make their way to this sort of planetarium area. So I'm wondering if, because they don't have the map, they have to go here to find out where to go next, and that's how they end up catching up with what Claudia is doing. And it does look like there are a few action shots that happen in the trailer that happen in here in this sort of planetarium area. I'm not exactly sure what it is. But just do note that is the case. Also, we do have like Amaya is here as well. So some of the plots that were separate last season are kind of crossing over a little bit. We also get that Claudia is kind of they're having to cart Viren around, I'm guessing because he just has moments where he's just like unconscious because he's on the verge of death once again. Despite ending last season, like taking up dark magic again and seeming kind of a little bit more back to himself, but the timer is running out. This is the point at which it is pointed out in the dialogue that Claudia is more powerful than anyone else. I think it's far more powerful. So this is just a water dragon. I don't think there's anything super specific about this water dragon, but Claudia does basically dodge its attack and redirects it back at the dragon. We don't see exactly what she does to the dragon, but the implication is that she's capable of defeating a specific water dragon. So again, using dark magic. Then we cut to, speaking of dragons, Ezran talks to an entire field filled with dragons. Now, again, there's a lot of dragons here. I think we see a water dragon here. You, of course, see Zim down here. Zubeia, I think this is. So this is a notable scene. Like, the leader of kind of Katalis talking to a huge group of dragons and them listening, because I guess he has the support of the current like dragon queen and prince. So I'm very eager to see how this scene actually goes in terms of like, does he get everyone on board? I don't see why he wouldn't be able to get everyone on board, because the Arvos threat is back and we know that they took this seriously in the past. Why wouldn't they take it seriously again? Then we see Claudia. This seems to be how one stage of their journey goes, which is obviously they have to get to the center of the Sea of the Cast Out, which I assume is what this is leading on to. So she's using this creature or part of a creature for dark magic, as we of course know. She goes into the water, activates it, and then we get this kind of flash to this kind of blood moon style thing with the red water kind of stuff going on. Not exactly sure what the spell is doing specifically, but I don't know, is it drawing out what they need to find here, or is it further pointing out what they have to find? Because of course, dark magic seems to have spells like that that can help like locate things, as we've seen before. We do get a flashback to a scene. Now, this is a season 3 scene as we first saw it. The context for this seems to be that Janai at some point has a nightmare about this specific incident. And there's a few different points in the trailer that are significant about like why this is being brought up. So the most obvious one is, remember what actually happens in this scene. So obviously, Arvos kills Janai's sister, the Sunfire Queen. But as he does so, he whispers in her ear and explains to her what happened to Queen Aditi, the legendary queen who we learned last season was quite important in terms of organizing like the dragons, the archdragons like Zadia, against Arvos and kind of leading to his downfall in some way. But she went missing in the middle of all of this and no one knows what happened to her. So Arvos reveals that truth to Janai's sister right before he kills her. And so the question is like, when are we going to learn about that? That's a huge piece of information because Aditi is more and more important as time goes on. So this is where we need to bring up one of the short stories that just came out for ahead of this season. So I think I have it just here, this one, yeah. New short story, The Queen's Mercy. So straight away, we're in Lux Aria. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. I'll try and sum it up the best I can. But Kim Dale. So this is the Blood Moon Huntress. So if you haven't read the second Dragon Prince graphic novel, Blood Moon Huntress, you probably should. As well as this story, again, which is just on the website. I'll link this one below as well, if you do want to check it out. But yes, Kim Dale is going to be introduced into the show specifically, not just in a comic and a short story, but we do need to go through this. So what seems to be happening here is that Kim Dale is known as like a legendary kind of like assassin. She is a villain through and through and has been for generations. She seems to want to come to Luxaria and kill, like assassinate Queen Aditi. So this is a flashback story here. This is her trying to kill Aditi back when Aditi was alive. So she seemingly like surrenders in Luxaria and asks for the mercy of the son of Queen Aditi, who is known for being, as we see here, merciful, kind, and so on. So she's brought before Queen Aditi. Of course, we've seen what she looks like before. And Queen Aditi knows exactly who she is. You know, she's the Blood Moon Huntress, Night Terror, Scarlet Shadow, and knows all about her crimes, generations old. So she's willing to apparently show mercy, and Kimdale is apparently getting exactly what she wants. So as we sort of saw before, like with Viren, brought before the sun to kind of face the sun's judgment to see if she's quote-unquote telling the truth, with the idea being that Kimdale is powerful enough with her sort of like blood moon magic, to be able to, I guess, get through that without suffering too much damage. And then with Aditi alone, she'll be able to kill her. But Aditi turns the tables here. It's not just the sort of light of the sun's judgment stuff going on. Instead, what Aditi does is she puts this magical item, this collar necklace thing, onto Kimdale. And this is the thing that Kimdale was unable to predict. Suddenly, Aditi has full control of the situation because of the effect of this magical item, which seems to effectively be almost like a kind of chokehold that Aditi has over Kimdale. And she basically explains that, you know, this is to protect her, so that, like, if you truly want the mercy of the Sunfire Elves, this is how I guarantee the safety of the people around me and myself. Because, you know, Kimdale's like, you know, I'll try to kill you, because of course what Aditi wants is for you to get forgiveness. Like, this is going to take, you know, generations. You're going to have to earn this mercy, and you're going to have to earn it from me and my future heirs. That's like how much of a villain this character truly is. And so she points out here that, like, this is magic similar to your own. It's a magic that demands, that takes. Kill me and that binding will take you. It will tighten until the life is choked out of you forever. And so what does Kimdale do? A great many things. Your hands will take generations to wash clean, and in those generations you will serve me and my children and my children's children until one of them sees fit to set you free. And of course she's trapped under the spell here because the Queen has control over this. And she points out, pray that my descendants are more merciful than I am, Blood Moon Huntress. And see, Kimdale is sort of trapped in this situation. But how does this all link together? Because we already know Aditi goes missing at some point. Now, based on the fact that both in this comic, and also I'll actually show this at this point, right at the end of the trailer, we get the reveal that in the present day, because again, this is a Sunfire Elf and a Catalyst guard working together, so this is not a flashback scene. Here is Kimdale, exactly as she looks in the story I just showed you there, and in the comic. She still has that magical kind of artifact on her, unbroken, still there. So it confirms to us that at least one thing that didn't happen is that Kimdale didn't kill Aditi, because otherwise Kimdale would be dead. That's what was directly told to us in that short story. Now, obviously, we seem to know that Aravos was involved to some degree. So if Aravos kills Aditi, then it doesn't matter, because she was pointing out the idea that, like, if I just die and the next generation takes over, you'll still be under the control, effectively, of my heirs. So it only works if if she specifically, I guess, kills her kind of master / controller. So what's going on in all of this? The comic itself doesn't particularly make note of, like, what situation is in, but obviously the most notable thing is that Kimdale is no longer in Luxaria as, like, a prisoner or anything like that. So I'm guessing when Aditi goes missing, maybe Aravos is just like, you go, like, be free. You could try and free yourself from that thing at a later point. Now, of course, Aravos kills the previous queen, and now we, of course, have Janai as the current queen. So I'm guessing what's happening here is that this is Kimdale coming for Janai to try to get her to, I guess, force her to remove this thing. Because this is going to point out, like, whenever we have her meet Janai, this I guess will point out, like, how much, like, does Janai know about this, like, that she has control over it, or is she hoping, Kimdale hoping she can kind of manipulate the situation to her advantage. Either way, it is the kind of proper introduction of a very notable character like in the lore. Now again, if you haven't read the extra material, it's a little bit of a different thing, because they did a bit of a YouTube premiere thing, so there was a live chat when the trailer aired, and it felt like half the people in chat, and it was a large amount of people, knew who she was. Half the people didn't have a clue who she was. So there's that whole idea of only a small fraction of your viewer base, your fandom, is going to have read extra books like this. So they are going to have to pretty much properly introduce this character, because you can't rely on just everyone having read the comic or having read the story here to know who this character is. But if you are paying attention, like us, more hardcore fans, then you know what the details are. So that's that. So we're back up here. Where were we? So yeah, we're here, all relating to why this scene is happening. Of course, Janai wakes up, has a nightmare about it, and of course is hugged by Amaya. Then we get a very interesting shot, which is Ezran talking to Domina Profundis. So this is who this is. This dragon is the archdragon of the ocean, Domina Profundis, who apparently has one of the next pieces of the puzzle to finding Arvos. Now, the question is, what's that going to be? Does she know where the prison is? Because they point out that, like, the whole idea here is that each has a part of the puzzle, but none of them have the complete answer overall. So if Domina Profundis maybe knows where the prison is, she obviously doesn't have the key or ability to open it herself. But is that actually the answer? And then is Domina Profundis who Claudia is being drawn towards or not is the other thing. That's like the kind of dual kind of nature of what's happening here. Because obviously here, it seems like Ezran gets to her. We're in the middle of, like, it's a stormy area here, so it's separate than the initial shot just up here where he's talking in a field. So it's way before that. So this is going to be exciting to see what the next Archdragon is like, because of course Rex Igneous was very like, I don't want to talk to you, until a little bit more kind of emotional stuff happened with him finding out about what happened to Abazandum. Then of course, yeah, we get, again, this is where they double down on again why Claudia is doing what she's doing, is because it has to be noted, like, she actually believes in Arvos, that, like, you know, Arvos gave humans magic. Without it, we wouldn't have magic. So she does believe in that side of things. But her core, like, emotional motivation here is that she wants to free Arvos because that's the only way to fully revive her father. So her motivations isn't that she's completely lost herself to being evil or anything like that. It's just, this is what she feels is the way to do things, and she doesn't want to lose anyone anymore. Especially after she effectively has lost Soren, thinking that he's chose the wrong side. And again, one of the other short stories here, I think it's this one, Lost Child, is sort of about this stuff as well, where we get to a point where, yeah, Claudia notes how she feels about, like, her mother leaving. And that whole idea of, like, she doesn't want to lose people to her anymore. And that's particularly, I think, notable here. Yeah, then we get more of the sort of, like, internal Viren stuff. I wonder how this is actually going to play out within the show. I'm guessing this will be sort of how they showcase the idea that he's, like, in between life and death, where he's only got a few hours left, is him in his head going through this whole idea of reflecting on his past, the person he's become with dark magic. And again, I think this is where we have to flashback to, like, the earlier parts of season 4, where he's almost, before he's kind of convinced about the whole plan, he's almost like, no, like, let's just enjoy this time together and kind of let me go. Like, don't you lose yourself, Claudia, to the magic like I have. Because I suppose getting into sort of, I suppose, the flashback here, the idea seems to be that who drove the mother away, Lissa away, it was Viren and the dark magic. And so he's seeing, I suppose, Claudia make the same mistakes he has. She is now following Arvos like he did in the first kind of couple of seasons. So I'm wondering how they're going to bring that kind of plotting back up. Then we cut to Rayla and Callum. So of course this was probably one of the best parts of season 4 was them coming back around to this plot. Rayla gets the coins back of her parents, but also Runan as well. So I think she has 3 of the coins. Not sure if there's any others, but these are the 3 notable ones, of course. So Claudia did explain to her that like their souls are alive, they're just trapped in the coins by dark magic. So she knows that whole thing. So in a way, this scene just kind of reiterates that kind of Rayla's emotions around the fact that she doesn't know how to free them, and I guess just Callum committing to helping her. So I guess this might be where Callum has to dabble a little bit with dark magic to try and somehow reverse this. I'm convinced they have to reverse this at some point, just because it feels like we have to get a scene of like Rayla with her parents again. I almost feel like it kind of feels a bit weird, but the scene with Rayla and Runan is almost kind of more important than their actual parents. But either way, 3 very important characters to Rayla. It would be nice to have this happen. Will it be this season? What are we trying to do? I'm not sure, but it certainly feels like a way to kind of help repair the bond between Rayla and Callum would be for them to work together to try and fix this problem, which is kind of part of the reason kind of Rayla left, like the whole comic flash forward time skip thing that they did. But anyway, there is that. Then we get this scene of like what was it? Ezran asks this character here, whose name is, I have it listed down here. Let's see, yeah, they ask a tidebound elf whose name in the subtitles on the trailer is called Tina, tidebound Tina apparently. They ask where they can find someone called Akiyu. So that's interesting. I'm wondering, like, is that maybe the elf that they showed in the flashback, who was the one who kind of, like, sealed Aravos in the prison? Is that who they're talking about? But I guess this is going to be, like, one of our first times properly seeing a tidebound elf, which is interesting. She seems to think they're all a little silly, but we'll see how it goes. I wonder, is this the person from like the very first shot that we have here? Is this just with like a little bit more at nighttime? Who knows? We'll continue on. Then we have this shot here, which is we see the ship that our heroes are on, of course, being I suppose chased down by this kind of pirate-looking ship, which will come back a little bit later in the next scene here, where we see Callum having a magic battle against one of the people on this ship. Now, I'm guessing this is a ship that has tidebound elf pirates or whatever. I don't know. Maybe they're not pirates. They're something along those lines. But it seems like one of them, of course, has magical powers and seems to have better control over sky magic than Callum does. Because you can see Callum's all beaten up here. Like, he seems to have a black eye. He's trying to use this magic, but it gets like shot up into the sky. And I think this relates to probably the last scene of the trailer before we get the cut to the Kimdale scene. Then we have this is Kasim, is it? Is it Kareem? This is Janai's brother, of course. So he is searching for something and he finds Soul Regum. So the Sun Archdragon, former Archdragon, I forget the exact details there, but it looks like he's going to come back into play. Now, he's a bit of an interesting one because based on the timing of things, I believe he might not have been involved in the whole like deal kind of that happened where they all split up the parts of the puzzle, but maybe he is, and this is the actual kind of truth of kind of some of that coming to play. I wonder what he's going to be up to, because of course he had his failed kind of coup attempt from before, but it seems like he's coming around a little bit. But he also has one of the short stories, After Darkness here, where it almost feels like this should have been included in season 4, where like they cover him and his friend Asato, and then Asato is basically taken by the corruption of Lux Aria. But then one of the human guards, Tijana, that's with them, the guy asks, like, cut off my arm before it fully infects me. She does that. But he loses himself even further because Kareem can't he has a magic spell that can apparently dispel the corruption, but it doesn't work. And so there's this situation where he's like, give me more time, give me more time. But she's forced to basically defend her life by killing her friend as well. And this is set, I think, before season 4 as well. So this is meant to sort of inform why he was the way he was, Kareem was the way he was going into the season, is because of this sort of situation like that, you know, the black corruption that's affecting everything and just the situation that he was in. So that's the whole significance of it, the red glove and so on. And again, it feels, is that a setup for season 5, or that almost should have been a setup for season 4? But that maybe is something they're doing there. We do get a kiss scene here with Amaya and Janai. And actually do back to back, like the 3 kind of main romances. So Terry and Claudia, Callum and Rayla, of course, as well. So that's kind of nice. Final scene's a bit weird. I'm not particularly sure what this is meant to be. But obviously some sort of a bear cat thing comes after Rayla and Callum. Rayla takes aim with a bow, fires and kills. They place a lot of importance on it. Again, that's probably if we have a better understanding about what exactly is going on here with this. Like, there's black stuff coming out here. Is this part of the Luxaria corruption? Is this meant to be related to the Blood Moon Huntress in some way? I'm not sure. Probably not, because they reveal the Blood Moon Huntress like after this scene. But then we cut to this scene where Claudia is, you know, falling into the deeps of the water. And it's actually Viren, corrupted by dark magic. So he uses dark magic, who actually comes down to save her, which is, I think, a bit quite interesting. Because at this point, which seems later on in the book, he must be like super close to dying again. So I wonder what, if Claudia is as powerful as they say she is in this book, what causes her to nearly be killed here? Is this on the trip in the ocean where it's just the elements that kind of get to them? Hard to say. And then the final shot is obviously Callum. You can tell it's Callum and not Viren, I think, because of the eye color. And again, Callum had a black eye in the scene on the pirate ship earlier on. So I think it's just him waking up from being defeated, or whatever way they're going to do that. Then we cut to the kind of, you know, final kind of like teaser scene here with the introduction of Kimdale, the Blood Moon Huntress, of course. Quick note on some of the dialogue. Arvos kind of notes that his freedom is close. Claudia is also close to kind of finding him. Callum and co are in pursuit. He notes that Claudia is powerful. Rayla is, I suppose, switching over to believing that like they're so far behind in the quest that Arvos probably will be freed. So why don't we find out how to kill a Star Touch elf? Which is very interesting, because again, the way the Star Touch elves are talked about, again, they point this out, I think, in like the flashback from last season. Like, they're referred to as like beings who like come from the sky, come from the stars. They're mysterious. The idea of like what star dragons are is an incredibly interesting concept. That's how powerful Star Touch elves are meant to be. So how do you actually kill one? Because again, if they could just kill them, no problem. Why didn't they kill Arvos in the past? No, they were forced to imprison him, because that's all they could do. So how did they kill a Star Touch elf is the question. Interesting. Claudia still wants to save her father. Arvos is how she will do this. We've already discussed that. Only a few hours left for Viren's resurrection, unless, you know, they find Arvos and he completes it. And you sort of wonder, like, is that maybe one limitation on magical powers? Can he actually bring someone who has died completely back to life, like permanently? I'm not sure. But again, they're almost teasing that that's part of like Kimdale and how she has like lived so long as well. So yeah, Rayla knows her parents are trapped in the coins, not dead. We already knew that, but you know, that's part of the dialogue here. Tie-bound elf, you know, Tina, how can they find someone called Akiyu? Who is that? And then yeah, the poem about the oceans and tides is here. Do not ask how the ocean's blue, or what a tides their time do keep. To love is simply to know this, the tides are true as the ocean is deep. So I wonder where this specifically comes from and what it's really about, but interesting. But yeah, we'll go into some of the other stuff. This is all kind of just taken from the news section of the website, which is pretty good about just recapping yourself on what's going on. So we have some screenshots they put out again back in May, but let's quickly kind of cover them and see could we attach any of these onto what we know from the trailer now. So here is Rayla and Stella looking at one of the coins. So they're obviously doing some investigation into one of the coins. I'm assuming this one on its own is probably Runan, so I wonder what's going on there. Stella is, of course, a mystery, just sort of by herself. Need to refresh this. Yeah, so, there's still mystery around Stella, because Stella, of course, is an animal who has the star primal connection with, like, teleportation stuff going on. So that seems quite notable that we have that on the team. Yeah, here's on the ship, they're talking to someone. This might be the kind of mage that Callum fights eventually, but I'm not sure. Again, carrying Viren probably during one of his maybe fits where he's on the verge of death again. Maya and Janai. Oh, so I'm wondering, is this Janai giving Amaya a Sunblade? So she has just a super powerful weapon. That's an interesting one. It certainly makes Amaya much more powerful. She's got the shield and now an actually powerful like offensive weapon as well. Rayla and Callum, of course. Viren, we saw this scene from the trailer, of course, just in the kind of in his mind as he's, I suppose, on the verge of death. This is from one of the clips we're going to take a look at, the call to aid, whatever's happening there. This is the area that they're in, the kind of planetarium-like area. So obviously something's going on here. Again, there's some action shots in the trailer. Something happens here. There's also a shot where Rayla fires an arrow and Callum imbues it with the power of lightning or gives it wind effects. Who knows? This one here with Kareem, obviously I guess is him finding Sol Reagan, or maybe just before that, but that's kind of notable. Here is Claudia, Terry, they've got the map, of course, with the tooth imprint on it, and the homunculus as well, which, when is this going to come into play? I really wonder, because this is meant to guide them to Arvos, but they have the map, so what's the deal here? Is this the key in the end to open it? Who knows? Then what do we have here? This is Callum researching some stuff. Is this him trying to figure out how to undo the thing with the coins? Or is this him trying to figure out a way to, like, where do we go next? Because there is a shot in the trailer where Callum goes, like, he freaks out and is like, they're like 2 or 3 days ahead of us. So is that just the result of this here? Hero shot, of course, here of everyone together. Look at the look on Stella's face there. But there's that. We have this is the second clip. So yeah, the first clip is this one, a call for aid. So there's Zubeya here, but you'll note that the characters here are Soren. It's like the kind of crown guard and the king. And they just go up to this kind of beacon. They have this thing in some sort of a, like, coffin type thing. There's some sort of gem that they take out, they put into this, and it puts out a beacon call into the sky. And something happens. The only thing I can think of is like this. Is this what summons Domina Profundis? Where do we have that scene? I think it's just up here, yeah. Is this what happens? Is the call for aid here the call for aid from Domina Profundis? I'm not sure, but that's certainly one to think about. So that's what happens there, and we pretty much cut off at that point. So either this is very early on, or is it surprisingly far into the journey? Again, I think it's before Callum and everyone arrive, so it makes me kind of think that this is much earlier, but who are they calling for aid for then? I'm not sure. Second one is much more character focused. It is a Callum and Rayla kind of romance scene, basically. They're looking at the sky. They just compare the different names that basically humans have for stars compared to Zadians. And then Rayla kind of snuggles in close. Callum is initially a little bit like, oh wait, I thought we're not quite back together yet. But then he himself kind of leans into it a bit. So this is one of the things that was a bit frustrating with season 4, was definitely that you had this amazing start to their relationship, like season 2 into 3. Then you had the stuff like from the first comic into the time skip, and you just didn't handle that very well in season 4. And then you did the drama, you know, we're not communicating very well, we can't talk to each other properly about this and explain it to each other, so we're just gonna not kind of still kind of be together but not quite be together. And it's just like, I hope it's just kind of as simple as just a few little scenes like this, them bonding over like, we need to find a way to get your parents out of the coin, and they're just back together. Like, I don't want this to be a multi-season long thing where we just have them really awkward with each other. I prefer they just kind of get back to the point with this. This is not the relationship you need to have the huge drama and then both learning from this drama to be a better couple. I think they work quite well together as like a wholesome couple, so I prefer they just kind of get back to the point with this one. And so hopefully a scene like this you know, gets us to where we need to go ultimately. Again, it's one of those things where like they've committed to this arc where they've kind of broken them up for a while, so I get wanting to have a little bit of an arc about returning them back together, but don't make too big of a deal out of it, please. So there's that. Then we get to some of the kind of posters, like pieces of key art. So this is from way back in March, of course, and you'll note that Nyx is here. And Nyx hasn't really been, we haven't seen her in like any of the other material, but obviously she's here on their boat. And here's the pirate ship that they encounter, whatever's going on there. Then we have this, which is quite interesting. So this is Domina Profundus. You can tell from the horns and the kind of fins on the side. So this is our archdragon here. A lightning bolt comes off the pirate ship because it's got the red sails. So I'm guessing what happens is that their ship gets kind of damaged. They're forced to get aboard the pirate ship, or the pirates capture them in some way, but they end up working together. And they together maybe find their way to, I don't know, to call for aid. Is that where this scene comes from? But this, again, like I said, this seems separate because Callum and the others aren't really in that one, while they are here. Then we have this key art, which is Callum underwater, but you'll note that Ezran is swimming down for him, as well as Rayla is swimming down for him, which is notable because she doesn't like the water. We also see this kind of octopus-like monster here, which is kind of maybe an interesting connection with this scene here, because Claudia is using some sort of an octopus-like thing, but I don't know if that means anything. So there's Below. And then, yeah, just some of the other short stories. So Ripples was the first one that they put out. And it's basically about sort of the influence of Arvos on humans as he kind of lands on Earth or whatever, lands on the planet, and sees the kind of ripples and influence that just kind of specific humans can have on other humans, and that he almost learns that like, this is how I can have an effect on people kind of myself. You know, humans thought him the idea of one thing leading to another, like the ripples spreading out, and kind of that's where that kind of influence in a way comes from. And again, it's an interesting one. It's still kind of vaguely talking about Arvos and the whole concept, but it's interesting. Definitely interesting. We already talked about the one with Claudia, the lost child one, but it does feature some of her kind of trying to interact with the homunculus thing, which is interesting. So again, they need to get to the point on what the deal with this is, because so far it's been a complete non-event after all the build up to it coming out of the cocoon. So there's that. Otherwise, it's some nice stuff about just kind of Claudia's mindset, about like people leaving her. This is why she's so dedicated to not losing her father, of course, after everything that's happened. All Storms End is the next one. This is interesting because it's like it's from Zubea's perspective, but also Zim is in it, and like it's basically the two of them looking at the remains, the statue of Avazandum, which is Avazandum, and kind of just reflecting on the kind of loss of the king, her almost wanting to protect Zim from being near it, but then they end up kind of being down right next to it, and it's her noticing like how similar her son is in certain ways to Avazandum, and it's a really nice one. I definitely would recommend reading through it. overall. It's a nice little story, again, fully from the dragon perspective, so something you don't maybe see as often, because there's often with the dragons you have like other characters around, but this is a full dragon focused scene, which is kind of nice. Then we have the Queen's Mercy, which is the one with Kimdale, of course, which is definitely worth reading if you like more of the lore history stuff with the deity. It's really, really good. Stranger. So yeah, this is the Soren one. And again, it's one of those ones where it feels like it maybe should have been included a little bit in season 4, because it's like him reflecting on that moment when he's captured by Claudia and his father, and how he feels like seeing his father like alive again, and his duty to Ezran and stuff like that. It's very interesting overall. Like there's again a reflection kind of into the past a bit as well. Again, and given some of the stuff that we know, where potentially, like, what was it, like Viren using dark magic to cure Soren, who was like on the verge of death, was this kind of crazy event that led to the mother leaving. We kind of wonder what exactly some of the details are surrounding that. Like I said, the last one that we got after Darkness is the one with Kareem. And the infection that has taken over Luxaria, and the death of his friend, and why he has a bit of a hatred for humans a little bit in season 4, because I believe, like I said, it's set before the events of season 4 as far as I'm aware. It's an interesting one though. It's quite grim and dark, because like it's just like character is forced to cut off another character's arm, is forced to kill another character in the kind of to avoid infection zombie type situation. So again, I wonder, like, are we going to go into that? Because I feel like this was almost brushed over as like, oh yeah, like the reason we're not in Luxaria for a lot of the season 4 scenes where we have the human elf dynamic is because it has this like infection going on, and I kind of felt like we never really touched on it as much as we maybe should have. And then the final thing is just to point out that just a few days after the season 5 comes out, so we're July 27th is when season 5 hits. 4 days, I think it's afterwards or whatever, on August 1st, I believe is when this comic comes out. Yeah, August 1st. We'll get the next graphic novel. So the third one to kind of follow Blood Moon Huntress. It's going to be Puzzle House. As you can see here, it's going to be a flashback story involving a younger Claudia and Soren as they interact with, like the trap pack tower built by their father's former and now mysteriously missing mentor, the powerful dark mage Kapar, who again we don't really know really much about and stuff like that. So this seems like an interesting one where we're maybe going to delve into some of the stuff about their past. It feels like there's probably going to have to be a mention to the mother, to who this Kapar person is, to some of Viren's past, just discovering dark magic and so on. How important is it necessarily going to feel? I'm not sure. But it's interesting. It's kind of similar to Blood Moon Huntress, where like this is a young Rayla kind of flashback story, but it ends up actually having quite an important role now that the Blood Moon Huntress is being kind of properly introduced into everything. So there is that. And yeah, I'll end with just some kind of final thoughts heading into season 5, because I'm not sure how much other material is going to be coming out prior to July 27th. That's maybe going to be worth enough to do another video on. But my main thing is that, yes, season 4 was a bit weak. I don't hate it. I felt like my final video I did on season 4 was very good to point out what I felt were the criticisms of the season, as well as some of the positives that it had. I think criticisms, and maybe it might affect this season as well. The Mystery of Arvo's plot, the kind of MacGuffin hunt style thing, is cool in concept, but you kind of worry about it from a structure point of view, because I don't think it helped season 4. Book 4, Earth. How much of the Earth aspect of the world did we get? And I felt like this was one of the biggest failings. The Dragon Riders were so forgettable because they were some of the only Earth characters that we saw. Now, of course, Terry is an Earth blood elf, of course, and that's cool. But is that character representative of the culture? not really. And then we brushed past them with Soren so much. The Dragon Riders didn't really mean that much. We had the kind of kid who kind of brought us through the caves, and that was sort of interesting. We saw some mines. But it was really all building up to just meeting Rex Igneous. And so it really felt like there was a lot of just time where we were just like, you're not really exploring the Earth aspect that well, because we pretty much arrived at the front door. We were told, oh, you can't go in, go around the back, and then that was all we really did. So the expectation I think here is just that, like, I hope we explore ocean tidebound elves a little bit more than we did the Earth. Does the trailer maybe get that across as much? Not sure. It depends on who the pirates are on the ship. This Tina character, who this character they're looking for in kind of asking her the question is. But there's potential. If Domino Profundus is a little bit more of an interesting character than Rex Igneous, there is potential there. But again, you sort of wonder, like, are we just going to Domino Profundus to get her clue to the next kind of phase of the plan? How many more of the seasons are going to be just getting to Arvos, finding Arvos? But I do think the fact that they're pointing out there's only a few hours left for Viren is highlighting that, like, we are going to have a conclusion to sort of the hunt in this season. I think that has to be the case, where they're either just committing to Viren is going to have his permanent death and won't be resurrected, but we'll still find a way to have Arvos come out, or we are just going to have Arvos freed and make our decision with Viren when we get there. So I do think they're probably hiding some of the really late season stuff that probably is about that Arvos will come back into play. Because he was only in like 2 or 3 minutes of season 4. We're expecting some kind of vision connection with Viren stuff here. But I think given that we have, season 6 and 7 still to go, the expectations probably have to be season 6 will have to be the Arvos is free, here is his plan executing itself. Heroes, quote unquote, lose, on the verge of losing. Final season is like the comeback season as we kind of turn the tables. I think that kind of has to be the way you do things, because I don't think you want to rush in like one season having Arvos come back, try to execute his plan, and be defeated all in one season. That you're putting too much focus on the setup, that when we get to the big payoff of Arvos is back, he's not trapped anymore. Arvos is free in full form, full power. I think we want to see that probably at the end of this season, or set it up for very early next season. I think you need the core of 2 seasons with the big character you've been setting up all this time to actually play a big role. So that's something that I think for sure has to happen. The other thing is probably just characters. One of the biggest problems I felt with season 4 was just that because of the whole drama, badly covering the time skip, the through the moon stuff, like being very like vague, hand wavy about what exactly happened, I felt like a lot of the stuff with the main characters was like just getting us back up to speed with where we are, but not in a good way that you usually get post time skip. And so it meant that like kind of Rayla and Callum was a lot of the season distracted by romance drama, that we never really focused on like, what was Rayla doing these last 2 years? Like, what specifically was she up to accomplishing? What happened? Where did she get Stella from? There's a million questions that you have. Similarly, like, was Callum just like angry and annoyed the last 2 years? You know, we really just brushed past a lot of that stuff. Similarly, same with Claudia. Like, okay, she clearly had to kill a lot of animals, potentially people, to follow Arvos' instructions to do the spell to kind of half revive Viren. But it's a long time period that you're not really covering that well here. And I think that's the main issue that I'd have, is that like we got no progress with, say, Callum and Magic. Like, he still just has Sky Arcanum connection, has done a little bit of Moon, but isn't connected to the Arcanum, and little bits and pieces here and there. Are we building up to that? Because I felt like that was kind of the arc with Callum, was that he was going to gradually gain full like Arcanum connections to the primal source, with all of the forms of magic and build it up that way. Whereas they actually more just went down the idea of sort of like Callum is the next one of these focus characters for Arvos, where like he's manipulating Callum in some way. The possession scene, the weird scene where Callum was just like, kill me, I'm too much of a threat. And I'm just like, no, this dark Callum thing, I don't like this. You haven't built this up well enough. So that, I guess, is still going to have to be there. I don't think they're just going to drop it, but they have to do better setup for it. But I think that's the problem, is that I actually don't really know what the trajectory for Callum is currently. Sure, we still have the stuff like, okay, reverse the spell on the coins to get Rayla's parents out. But in the bigger picture, like, Callum is our proper, like, main character. What are we doing with him? I'm a little bit unsure about just the overall, like, trajectory. Like, the whole key of Arvos, the cube, like, what is the deeper significance of that? That's a bit up in the air. Rayla's back now. Okay, we dealt with the whole, okay, she has hope for her parents, but they're still trapped. We can maybe begin to get back on track now with the, like, positioning of these characters. And that's where, like, I felt like the Kareem stuff with the Sunfire Elves and the humans was at least a plot that just worked, because it wasn't so distracted doing all this other stuff from like the season before. So that's what I kind of want to see here, is just like, we've done the sort of introductory stuff now that we're back post time skip. We need to get back into, these are relatively well developed characters. Can we continue with their arcs now, please? Because otherwise you would say that the main consistency has probably been actually Soren, Vera, and Claudia have the depth to them, because that's been the dynamic throughout the whole season, that Viren is a complicated villain. Claudia is now a complicated villain. Soren is the character who made the right choice, but is conflicted by it because, you know, he had to kind of abandon his family. That whole family is fascinating because of that kind of depth and nuance that doesn't quite feel like it's there with the others. Whereas, like, say, like, Ezran is kind of in a bit of a weird position where he's the king and is actually a really good king, but you have to have him on the adventure with the other characters. So it feels like he's almost abandoning his position to a certain degree, but you have to have him here, and then you have to have, like, Zim there as well, because that's the main team. And how do you exactly make all of that work correctly? It's that you can see the kind of complexities, but overall, I think Ezran is a pretty well written character, because they're pretty consistent with him. Whereas I think the problem with Callum and Rayla is just that they got a little bit lost with the whole romance drama being the focus of their dynamic for last season, and I hope we can get back on track. Anything else is just sort of like I said, I hope the ocean stuff comes across a little bit better here through the world building, the plot. I'd like to get the more sort of like go here, then go here, then go here to get this item dynamic out of the way. So I hope we end with, like, Arvos is here and the plot is he's here, he's about to do his plan, we now have to deal with that. Or we maybe have to accept that we can't deal with him right now and try and make amends once he completes what he's trying to do, you know, that sort of thing. That's what I'm waiting to see. But yeah, it just feels like this kind of needs to be an important make or break season for the show, because I think a lot of people after reflection have come back around on the idea of, like, yes, season 4 was kind of weaker than it probably should have been, because they had quite a lot of time to make it, but it felt like the gap in a way caused it to be a little bit too much of a restart to production rather than a continuation of production. And so we're kind of trying to build up that kind of consistency once again. And that was the thing. Like, I think initially when season 4 hit, there was a discussion about, like, have we overhyped this for ourselves? And it could never possibly meet the expectations. Or is it actually just not as good as it probably should be? And I think people have realized over time that yes, it was not quite up to standard. Again, I'll maintain, not terrible. There's still good elements to the last season, definitely, but messier than it should have been. Like, probably one of the worst executions of a time skip I've seen in like any show. How they managed to confuse and bungle the whole like through the moon setup and stuff like that was really weird. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on Dragon Prince Season 5, Book 5, Ocean, on the trailer, all the extra material that we have. What are your expectations heading into this season after the generally thought of as disappointing Season 4? But yes, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.